All right, guys, we are live. Well, happy Community Manager Appreciation Day 2016. This is the seventh year we've been celebrating community managers all around the world ever since Jeremiah Owing recommended that we take the fourth Sunday of every, or the fourth Monday, I'm sorry, of every January, and just take some time to appreciate community managers and recognize the work that we all do. So we've been doing this live hangout now for 4 years, and for the last 3 years we've been working with sponsors to produce a series of awards. We're really excited about those awards. In fact, this year we've had over 300 different nominations for community managers all over for those awards. So if you keep tuning in, you'll be seeing those awards announced a little bit later today. All right. So, hi everyone. My name is Brew, Director of Awesome with Be the Change Revolutions, as well as co-producer at My Community Manager, and happy to be here. And this is Sherry.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Rohde, and I'm the Community Manager at Magento, as well as co-producer at Sitting Here Hangout.
Hey guys, I'm Barack. I'm the founder at Amplify Your Biz and the community manager at Meshfire, and we are live from Seattle.
Hey guys, it's Dom here. I am project and community manager for Be the Change Revolutions, as well as co-host of CMGR Hangout with Sherry and Brew. Want to take some time right now to give a shout out to our amazing award sponsors. You see them on the wall, right above Sherry and Brew's head, but just to give them a little bit of some extra love. Just wanted to say big ups to you guys. Salesforce Community Cloud, Higher Logic, Online Community Results, Sprout Social, Vanilla Forums, Zoomph, CommunityManagement.org, SocialMedia.org, Amplify Yourself, Igloo Internet, and Meshfire. So big thank you to all of our sponsors, and be on the lookout for the first award, which we are going to be giving away in 5 hours. Holy cow. 5 hours.
That's it.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, so this is hour 6 of 24 hours, and it is driving international communities. And Ed, we'll kick things over to you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Brill, for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to have us here. So I'm going to quickly introduce myself, and possibly we can maybe introduce Edgar and then Moritz later. So I'm Ed. I'm originally from Brazil, working and living in Ireland as a global community manager in Dropbox. I'm also the founder of eDublin, which is a community for Brazilians living in Ireland.
So, hey guys, my name is Edgar Medina. I work in a company called Riot Games, a game development company, as a Spanish community manager. Originally, I come from Spain, but I'm also living and working in Dublin. In the Spanish community team, my mission is to work with the team to ensure that our Spanish, specifically talking about the Spanish market, to ensure that our Spanish players get the experience they feel they deserve.
Yeah, and I'm Moritz. I'm the German community manager for Chrome, Google+, and Google Play at Google, as you can see here. And I'm living here in Dublin as well, and I've been doing that for 3 years now, and was one of our volunteers in the product forums that we use for support before I joined Google. So I was on the user side, now I'm on the community manager side, which is quite fun.
Cool. Very good. So it's going to be possibly the three of us. I'm not sure if we need to explain much about the products we built because they're quite known somehow. But perhaps like a little bit about how did we end up in this international community. I know that Google has like a quite strong international community base, and same fit for Riot Games because their players are across the globe. So first of all, like I'm not sure if you guys were there long enough, but I've probably been in Dropbox too at the time where international didn't really exist as a community. So it's actually kicking off now. So it's going to be good to actually learn from you guys that have been there before. But I think before we even start around like the questions that we had set, can you guys just give us a background on like how did you end up, or how did international community kicked off at your respective companies?
Sure. Should I start? Okay. So when I joined Riot, I think it was like 3 years and 3 months ago or something like that. I remember when we were in a way smaller office with I think there were representatives for like 5 or 6 languages. Now we are supporting 9 in Europe, if I'm not wrong. I remember that we were 1 person per language. And again, our mission was literally to, think of the best possible experiences we could provide to local players, because we saw that the communities were growing, and also community was overall appreciative about the fact that we were thinking about themselves locally. The teams just started to grow, and because we were launching different languages and more languages, let's say that, the team has expanded to, I don't know how many we are right now, but maybe 20x30 here in Europe only. So yeah, it's been beautiful to see how the company grows itself. First of all, our company is not as as old as, for example, Google. I know they've been there for a while, but it's amazing to see how how the community responds to the fact that we think of them in a very local way.
Yeah, for me, when I joined, the team was already pretty much fleshed out in terms of international. So we already had a Spanish team, Portuguese team, German team, and our scope back then when I joined was a little bit different to what it is now. We were called market specialists because we were having more market insights, which is now marketing handling more or less, and we were doubling down or focusing more on the community side of things and the users and engaging in our forums, and now we're trying to dip into social as well. To Twitter and supporting users there, and we try to do that on an international level for sure. It always depends on how big the markets are, and if it really makes sense to go there. I mean, our goal is really to try to support as many languages and many markets as we can. But for example, if you look at small markets like Sweden or something like that, do you really have to staff community managers for that, or can you kind of try to support those users in a different way? And I think that's a challenge that we're facing, to provide that at scale and in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think we have, obviously, the 3 of us here don't have English as the first language, but we're able to communicate. But most of the users, they are possibly not able to communicate in English or any other language that it's tend to be the catch-all language. So English is not necessarily the language everyone speaks, but it's the language that is common across people. And people think about international communities as, oh, let's just put a second language to that, and that's going to fix problems. But I think, as you said, there's not only problems with the actual language, but even the platform itself, adoption, and how ready the users are. Could you just give some examples? I have some cases here that I think it's a good example would be users complain a lot about the sync speeds in Dropbox, and that's something that's common across every place in the world. But certain countries in which we have communities, that tends to be the discussion that goes over and over. Like in Brazil, for instance, because the broadband there is not super fast. I think right now the average speed is 1.5 megabytes, where in Europe is around 11 or 12 megabytes. So it's clearly 10 times slower, and obviously the consequences are that everything else won't work as expected. I know that Facebook did some tests where they were having developers using the 2G connection for a while, so they could see how users would feel that. How does that change the behavior of your communities when you're actually talking about them in different countries? I know Germany has a lot of constraints, and they're concerned about privacy. I'm not sure about Spain. How does that work? So could you give some examples of changes across community that's not related to the language only?
Yeah, as you said, in Germany, we have huge concerns about privacy, and we try to, ensure with certain changes that we recently did to the Account Central to give more transparency and more clarity to users, how they can do that, and we really listen closely to the feedback that we get around those. But another example is, for example, Russia, where we see a lot of issues around malware, for example, in Chrome, where there are very dubious and suspicious Chrome extensions floating around that people are sending out, claiming to be official Chrome downloads and stuff like that. So there are different issues per market, and that's what we see. And then we try to discuss that in the channels that the users prefer, which can be forums, or now we as I said, go into social as well, because we try to be where the users are and use the channels that the users prefer, just to support them there.
I think in our case, it might be a little bit different because, because we are the game. We are in an environment where players don't necessarily need to download huge amount of data or go with stuff like that. we like our connections are not that strict in terms of like bandwidth. However, we face different challenges as well. For example, to take on Morit's example, as in Russia, we faced some issues when players were not able to download, in this case, the game itself. So we opted to provide CDs, so players could have the big chunk in a different format that they don't need to do that, and then they would just patch, but patches just require less bandwidth. In Europe, for example, I'd say one of the biggest challenges we have, and it's even like happening nowadays, is latency overall. So even though you don't need to download stuff, in order to play the game online, you need to be all the time connected to the internet. And different markets have different ISPs, different routing connections, and all of this. So the way we try to fix it is we opt to try to collaborate with those ISPs in order to ensure that they route their connections directly to our servers. And therefore, if that happens, then players are able to play with better latency and therefore in better conditions. So I come originally from Gran Canaria, in the Canary Islands, which means we are very far from even Spain. So I experienced that that side of having a bad connection with a bad experience overall in game, and it's pretty frustrating. So we also make sure that players at least understand the situation, and we try to give them as much clarity as possible when it comes to explaining what does routing mean, or how are we working to try and improve the experience. And actually, I think 1 month ago, we gave a huge update because we are building also our own infrastructure to try to serve better the player experience.
Cool. And the two things that you guys mentioned are around the feedback that the users are giving you guys through the community, and obviously through being users yourselves. But how do you actually, because most of the engineers won't speak Spanish or German or Portuguese or whatever language, so how do you guys collect this information? How do you make sure this is relevant, and then you send it back to your engineers or to your development team? How does that work?
Do you want to start, Moritz, or should I?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'd say, first of all, we have local teams that serve different communities, and therefore we make sure that internally we foster connections among also writers. So even though an engineer might not speak all languages and might try to look for all players' feedback, we have people in charge of that communicate directly to them. So now answering how do we actually collect that feedback, I'd say there are 3 different things. So the first one is, as silly as it sounds, we ask our players. So we literally go to the channels where they are and we say, hey, how are you guys? How are you currently feeling? What does your experience look like as of today, and what would you improve? And we try to talk to them in a one-on-one basis. Apart from that, because players always tell you what they think first, and maybe there's other things that they just take for granted and could be a bad thing for us. We try to hear also organic interactions, and that happens. Same as in the way we ask them is through forums or social media or different platforms that they normally use. And the last one is behaviors. It's not only about them voicing over that stuff. Not all the players always have time to spend on providing feedback or talking on the forums and all this. We try to see what is happening with play behavior. So for example, if we see a massive drop on time spent in the game, maybe that means that they're having a very bad experience. Or we see that this is happening is because maybe they are on the forums complaining because they cannot play. So I think that's a 3-way, which is we ask, we hear, and we see. That's the TLDR I would just put on our side.
Yeah, for us, we have, our main channel is the in-product feedback. So in every product, we have a way to submit feedback to us. And a lot of users always think this is a one-way thing, and it just goes directly to DevNull, and no one's going to read that. But that's actually not true. We have systems that cluster all the feedback together in bigger buckets, so it's easier to go through the feedback, and it's automatically localized or translated as well. So the engineers that look at it, can understand it, even though the feedback is coming from the Netherlands or from Russia or from Asia or whatever. The other way is our product forums, where we often see issues rising as well, even before it bubbles up in our normal feedback channels. And then we have our volunteers, which we call top contributors in the forums, and they, especially when something breaks, they send it to us. But if it's more feature requests and stuff like that, we definitely appreciate that and thank the users for it and pass it along to the engineers. And then it's always a decision that has to be made, how many users actually ask for a feature, does it make sense to build that in? And I think Edgar can echo that as well. We have often, users or players that want something, but in terms of the bigger picture, it may not make sense, and it's always like this inner conflict. You want to help this user and make this happen, but on the other side, it doesn't really make sense to listen to this one user or make this wish happen. I mean, sometimes it would be great, but oftentimes it may not be possible. And we also try, because sending feedback is one thing, but kind of like closing the loop is a different story, or also important. And especially with the in-product feedback, we try to get away from this one direction. And we had one example with maps, I think 1.5, 2 years ago or so. We rolled out a new version, and it had no feature to download the maps anymore, to cache them on mobile, which is important for a lot of markets where they don't have good mobile data deals. And it was gone. And we received so much feedback that within, I think, 48 hours or so, the engineers picked it up, built it out, pushed an update, and it was there again, and users were happy. And they actually sent out an email to all the, I don't know, a couple of 100,000 users, an email that's thanks for your feedback. Your feedback provided us with insights to make this change. And I think that's really, really key, and those moments to delight users and surprise them with those changes.
There's also I love the last example you mentioned, because there's been also instances where players' feedback has not only influenced, but maybe even taken decisions on how do we want to tackle some things that we do here in Riot, like the strategy. One thing that comes to me first is one of the maps that we released long time ago, which is the Aram. Aram, for the ones that might not know, the game is how can I explain it? It's a map where you get a random champion and you play against other people. It's a very randomized experience, and players just really liked it. And instead of only asking for it, they were creating custom games where they just put the rules, and the environment was not really helping them to try reinforce the rules. So therefore, because we saw not only that players were asking for it, but also the behaviors, they were just creating stuff for themselves. We ended by building a map for them, and to me, those are the kind of stories that really matter when it comes to talking about how communities influence the the different strategy in different companies. So
yeah, that's super. I think you guys have amazing examples. We met before, and I'm biased, so I'm not gonna give away. I spoil anything. We can talk about it. But I know you guys have really cool experiences that you drive to international users. Another quick question that comes to mind, and I know it's not in our list, but it came to mind when you guys mentioned that you use forums or you use social media to collect feedback. How does that change in terms of platforms? I know that I think Edgar mentioned that you guys use VK already to engage with users in Russia. What are the different platforms that you deal with to actually make sure that you collect this feedback in meaningful ways?
Normally, the platform we normally use in Riot, we have two ones, the ones that are owned by Riot, the official ones, because we always want to make sure that there's at least one platform that players can go. But because we have, local talent here in Riot, we always make sure that we are where our players are. So we care, of course, about the health of our platform, but we make sure that we are reachable everywhere. So yes, you mentioned VK is one of the biggest platforms in Russia, and therefore it wouldn't make sense for us if we want to pursue that kind of local mission of being with players, among players, and take that feedback. It wouldn't make sense if we are not there. So in Russia, we use VK. In Europe, depending on different markets, we might use Twitter, Facebook, or even both of them. That makes sense for us. So it's really a matter of where do we feel our players are, and also what is trending now. So as an example, a year ago, we decided to not only use Facebook in Spain, but also use Twitter. And the reason why was because Facebook, from our players' point of view, was being used more like a blog style where players were seeking for content, while Twitter was more like a way to interact with the official platforms or even Rioters. So we've ourselves as Rioters, as individuals, we created our own Twitter accounts because players wanted to not talk to Riot, but talk to a person. But also we created a LOL Spain Twitter account. So we have I'd say between individual accounts and the League of Legends Spain one, we have 4 or 5 accounts because players seek for different ways of interactions. And again, we literally go where our players are, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense for us.
Yeah, I agree on that. Especially the personal note, I think users really appreciate that there's not just the name Riot Games or Google or Dropbox, that there are actually like people and faces behind that as well. And we do that on Google Plus, for example. I mean, we have some like help communities and we have official handles there as well. But most of the time, we engage with users on a personal level in the forums on Google Plus. We, starting to do that in Twitter as well. Like on social, we are still doing our first steps in that direction, and we're looking into Facebook and other channels. Because, as you said, like we want to be where the users are, and that is often different, per market. Like we were looking into Twitter for Germany, but in Germany, Twitter is not really that used that much in terms of support. Maybe Facebook makes more sense there. Same in Brazil, where users use more often Facebook than Twitter. And these are all channels that we look into. But right now, like we focus on the in-product feedback forums as our main channel, and was over the last couple of years. And now we look into like expanding those channels to other channels. And I think Ed is frozen. We may have lost Ed here.
Yeah, I think we've lost him.
But yeah, I think it's really important to personalize support, because if people just see big corporation, as you said, like that don't really appreciate that much, other than like if Edgar would go there and it's like, hey guys, listen, like thanks for your feedback and we're working on some changes and stuff like that. They definitely appreciate that a lot more than having some corporate standard yada yada.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you make a great point, which is like people don't normally only look to talk to brands and all these. They want to talk to people, and I mean, we've seen cases where some Rioter individual accounts are bigger than our local channels, like the official League of Legends channels, and that's because they want to have a person that they can refer to, because we speak their language. We are where they are from. That creates some. I mean, when I talk to people that are from my country, I feel like a little bit more connected, and I feel that I'm sharing the same relevant. I'm sharing like more relevant information, even though that might be exactly the same. So it's kind of like I create some sort of like trust or trust link where I can literally voice my opinion in a different way than I would do to a trademark talking to me, because that's not to me a person, that's more like a brand, and brands normally don't only brands tend to inform more than just like interact with others, and I think that's key for most of the companies who are aiming to provide a genuine or authentic experience overall. So that makes sense.
That's super important. I'm sorry, I got dropped by, I don't know what happened here to the connection. Anyways, but I was actually really interested in this discussion, because we noticed here that when like I engage as Ed versus as Dropbox, it makes a total difference to the users and how they actually react. Sometimes even like replying to someone in a question that they have on the community, or if you're actually even spreading out the message somehow. I know that we all have, because we're all brand communities, we all have like our official channels, as you mentioned, and we tend to use those channels to broadcast information in general. But if users get back to us and we reply to them as not a brand, but as a person, that makes a total difference to them and how they engage. And I know that you guys also have that's probably the next level of what you guys bring to the communities. We did it for the first time last year. I have our super users, which is sent to top contributors or most active, players, and we brought them to San Francisco to, kind of a meetup, and we actually had this offline time together. It was super cool. Obviously, we're in a smaller scale yet, where we did it in English only, let's say, so we all had to speak in English, even though people were from different countries. But we did like for the first time in one specific language only. But you guys did it like in many other ways in different scales. Could you share a bit more about like your top contributors meetup or your worlds across Europe that you have done as well? That's super cool.
Yeah, sure. So we have, as said, like we do similar meetups as you just mentioned. So every 2 years we have a big summit at the headquarters in Mountain View as well, with all our TCs from around the world, TCs, top contributors, which are volunteers in our forums helping users with their knowledge. And those meetups are always fun because they get to engage with other TCs from around the world that can talk directly with the product team, spend time with their community managers, and as you mentioned, the language barrier is like the huge problem that we're still trying to solve in an elegant way, because the content is getting delivered, most of the time in English, but yet you have some of the users or TCs that are not really able to speak English. And we have dolmetschers there that are translating most of the time the sessions to our TCs, but in like smaller groups, you still have this problem. And last year we tried to have community managers that kind of translate that and help them, or let the TCs ask questions in advance, which we then translate. So that's still a big problem that we try to solve. But one way to tackle that is that in every other year between those big summits, we have local meetups where we actually meet in the respective countries. So we had a meetup in Munich, for example, for all the German users, and we had one in London for the English users here in EMEA, and then one in Tokyo with all the APAC users. So that's good. And for those meetups, we also include our what we call rising stars, so helpful users in the forum, which are not quite at the top contributor level yet, but they're still already helpful and providing good answers. Just to build this community even more and get more people involved and bring those two groups together. And that's always fun, and we try to have those local meetups less or more product agnostic, so don't really talk about the products, but more about the community itself or market challenges, make it more market-centric to see how we can improve things there.
I think, I love the approach that you guys take. We have slightly fun because we feel that, first of all, there's someone doing, okay now. So the way we normally position is that top contributors for us in Riot is a very wide topic, because the way you can, add your contribution in League of Legends as a game varies a lot. So for example, in our own forums, we have people who are extremely, enthusiastic and tend to help other people, and those are the ones we put inside what we call the volunteer program. In that program, we try to provide, so the TLDR of how do we work with contributors overall is we try to empower them we try to help and empower them so they can make what they want to do and what they want to achieve in an easier way. So the ones in the forums, we try to create tools for them to be able to do what they want to do, which is normally either moderated to ensure that the forum health is up to the quality bar they expect. And those guys, normally we have meetings with them like in a regular basis, in a weekly basis actually, so we can have an update about how do they feel the forum direction is going on, etc., etc. However, apart from the ones that normally activate or collaborate with us via online, we have people who really want to take League of Legends to the next level, such as, for example, cosplayers or even content creators. And the way we work or we collaborate with them is very differently. So, to give an example, for the cosplay itself, we tend to create. So what we've done in the past is two things. So first of all is we've given them reasons to try and excel in what they do. We've done several call to arms with themed topics that we put in the website, so we can gather their materials and their pictures and all these, and we can publish so we can help them grow, because that's one of the things that they want to really do. They want to be able to voice over their passion about League of Legends. Another thing is that because we normally, as a gaming company, we've done offline events and so on, we tend to collaborate with them so they can go there with us, and they can also not only grow as cosplayers, but also get to meet other people and overall have a great experience. For content creators, it's a very different topic. So we've done highlights in our websites and in our channels, because we feel that it's even more authentic, the content that those content creators create for the local communities, than even the one we do. And our players are extremely hungry to consume content overall, and we can't really serve them in the pace that they're asking for. So we also collaborate with those content creators by highlighting them and making sure that the ones that are local, that are becoming local heroes, can serve a bigger audience, because that's how we feel it should be overall. So again, in summary, we try to empower top contributors in different ways, but again, like, people take the game or the enthusiasm for the game in very different ways, and we want to make sure that we try to adapt to each of the players' needs.
Good. A quick question on the content creator, because I think some people may think it's about UGC, of like someone creating content for you. Are they creating content for Riot, or they create content about Riot that goes, they're in their own channels? How does that work?
Okay, so first of all, thanks for asking that question. So we've done both things. So some of the videos we've produced as Riot come from collaborations between ourselves and those top content creators. But originally, those content creators create content about the game we develop. So think of it as, if I am a basketball player, I am also a person who wants to record games because I am very enthusiastic about that, and I want to share my passion among others. So therefore, I record events, I record games itself, and all these, and I even sometimes do commentaries about that, or I play games with other people. So I'd say like content creators are originally the people who create content about the game, but for those who are considered the top amongst the top ones in different local countries, we've done collaborations because we feel that they've reached a quality bar that we feel comfortable at publishing in our league channels. So it's a mixture, but overall we identify those guys as top content creators in different countries.
Super. So we actually have Katerina now who joined us quite late. But Katerina, would you mind introducing yourself? Where you are from? Where do you work? And what you do?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, we had some connectivity issues, and I see my webcam is not the best. So I'm Kat from LinkedIn. I manage our social media support for LinkedIn. So that entails mostly Twitter help, and we have a few help forums, and we manage a few LinkedIn official groups. So we have a small community within the groups, but otherwise we mostly manage the social media aspect of LinkedIn.
Cool, thank you. So a couple of things we're talking about, and I think maybe it'll be interesting to hear from you as well, is how do you guys, handle international communities? Do you have like specific channels? Do you have any specific people from those countries that are native to talk to these people? Which languages support? Like, how does that work for LinkedIn?
Yeah, so we have we mostly support in English, so that is our official help language on social. So obviously we have a help center for international members. We support a lot of different languages, and we have localized and translated content for those members. However, on the community side of things, we officially support only English. For the countries that we have localized content for is Spain, Germany, and France. So, oh yeah, and also we have the DACH region, so Netherlands, and yeah. So for those we have specific handles. Those are not help handles as such. There's mostly engagement handles. We share different content that is localized for those languages. However, anytime our community needs help in one of those languages, our help handles that are holistically managed by the specific region, say LinkedIn Spain, they're then directed to our English handle. So then members get a option to either communicate in English with us, or we have a direct link to go directly to the Spanish team, the way they can communicate in their native language.
Very good, cool. Another point, I know that we have, again, I'm probably going way off our questions, but it's somehow coming together. But I think it's as part of this overall international communities dealing with people in different, let's say, countries or markets. It depends on how you guys break this down. It may be that you talk about Latin America as one thing, and you include Brazilian Portuguese with Spanish, or maybe you're talking about Spanish markets that's Latin America and Spain, or Spain only. So it differs a little bit. But how is your breakdown across Riot, Google, LinkedIn? How do you think markets, and what are the specific things you do for those markets that are not being done in others? How do you guys do this integration in region, market, language? How does that work?
If I start, I think so. I've collaborated with other companies, and I've seen that different segmentations come, for example, from EMEA or Spanish-speaking countries and all this. So again, because we generally care about the player experience, and we want to make sure that we serve them in a timely manner. Therefore, we don't want them to be sleeping while we serve content. All of these, we've taken the approach of like serving her, I don't know how to put it in words. Maybe we took the maybe smart approach, or that's how we call it, whatever, on serving players in a local basis. So to give an example, we don't treat Portuguese-speaking markets such as Brazil and Portugal, because it would be hard for us to try serve content in a timely manner. Again, if we serve Brazilian players in the time frame, Portuguese players wouldn't have the content they want and their time. If we do the opposite, that's different. Same happens with Latin America and Spain. So we actually have 3 different Spanish-speaking teams. We have Spain as the Spanish market in Europe. We have Latin America South and Latin America North. And the reason why is because even though we share the language, and although some of the expressions are different, but even though we share the same language, it's hard for us to serve content in a good way. We want to really make sure that players feel they are receiving authentic content. And also in Latin American, there's even cultural differences between countries. So therefore, we've tried to choose different groupings. So it's also scalable for us. Of course, we need to make sure that that both sides of the coin are always served. But in Europe, for example, we serve by countries. We don't serve by like regions and all these. Although, to give you an example, Austria and Germany, we're trying now to serve in by language sometimes. So it's, let's say we normally take a gut check. We make sure that our local guys here say, hey, it makes sense. But for example, I'm sure that if you ask me as a Spanish guy, I would always say, let's separate Latin American and Spanish people, because again, we are different overall. We speak the same language but in different ways. So we, as mentioned in summary, we serve in a very, very local basis.
Yeah, for us, we have only the English support is mainly in the US. We don't have English support here in Europe. And as you said, we face the same challenges with Spanish and LATAM and Portuguese in Brazil, and French, for example, where you have also French-speaking in Canada. But for all those languages, we have our main support here in Europe, and we try to still reply to users in a timely manner. But it is definitely a challenge. And we were doing some experiments where we had some of our support staff in Mountain View, but they were supporting the Spanish users to focus more on LATAM, because we figured out that most of the questions that we receive in the forums were not during our daytime. Most of those questions were actually coming from LATAM, so we kind of had to shift over to have the support more in their time zone rather than having them in EMEA. And these are the challenges that we face, and you try to want to give users an answer as soon as possible, and don't let them wait for 24 hours or even longer. So we definitely pay attention to those details and figure out where are the questions coming from and which time zones do we get those questions. Russia itself is a huge challenge, because Russia is so huge that it spans over 4 different time zones, similar to the US. So sometimes we get questions from all the way Eastern time zone of Russia, and they then have to wait another day until they get the support, because our support staff for Russia is here in Dublin as well. But yeah, these are the challenges, and I think we still have to try to tackle those in a better way.
Yeah, I think for us it's handled by language and country. So we don't have regions as such for social media. So here, again, as I said, we only have English support on our social channels, and also for our community management and all the groups, they all happen in English as an official language. And then we have, obviously, for support related issues that go directly to our customer support department, they have for per language queue. So they're handled mostly from Europe. So the languages are handled from Europe. And then we have also English support here and in US and in APAC. So this way we managed to handle the SLAs much faster than we would have if we only had English support, say, in one place. So for social, we have coverage from 6 a.m. until about 7 p.m. Central Time. So we're actually missing the APAC time zone, so that kind of gives us a little bit of backlog in the mornings between when US logs off and EMEA logs in. So we actually just handle those in the time frame they come in, basically. So
Cool. So another question that also, I mean, we were talking about this as well that came up. I remember when I was working for Zynga, the gaming company, we had our FAQs were called 411s, and 411, for those who don't know, I think all of us here in this case, means frequently asked questions or support questions, because these are, the 411 was a number you used to dial for the yellow pages before. That's in US, so that's a super US-centric approach to an FAQ. An FAQ itself is also a term that means in English, it's an English acronym. So that brings me to the question of, sometimes people don't really localize content, they just translate the content, and obviously it makes no sense for the users, like in their countries or their regions or and so on. Another example would be like concurrencies. If you see a lot of content that has been translated and they still show the dollar sign rather than the currency, their local currency, and things like that. So for you guys, what's the difference in localized content versus translated content? How do you guys handle this? What do you guys do to make sure that the content makes sense to the user?
So first of all, like in Riot, we are not really big fans of translations. So even though there are some, of course, specific instances where this is needed. So to give you, like, because different companies might understand translate and localize in different ways, I'm going to give you, first of all, our approach to what is for us translation and what is for us localization. So translate for us is literally editing content from one language to another. So local communities can understand it. It's literally just translating as a word. Okay. So as an example, in our game, our game changes almost every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because we do tweaks in different champions, or we release new content and all of this. So there's information that requires to be given or shipped to all of the countries. And because it's like very technical information about like what are the changes we are doing in someone's damage or skills and all this, we tend to translate the core of it, although we try to adapt some, such as jokes, etc., to our players. Now, for us, which is like localization is one of the things that we feel mostly passionate about, because it's not only adapting written content, but also trying to seek for ways to better express or project what we are trying to tell to our players. So the way we work is we have a central team, which means like a team that serves globally, like content globally. But then because we have local teams, those local teams try to get. We don't only get the core text, but we also get a context about the why, the how, and the what are they actually going to serve to our players. And therefore, we are able to identify what could be the best strategy to serve this piece of content to our players. An example that I wish I could share pictures, because we have whatever. I'll explain why. But one of the things we do is releasing champions, and sometimes players either don't want to read the wall of text we give to them because there's a huge change log about bugs or issues or things we change in the spells. But as an example, in Turkey and in Spain, we try to take what we think a little bit of a step further, and because our players are huge content consumers, like audiovisual content consumers, we've built a small studio in different local offices, so we can not only provide the context by written, but we also have subject matter experts trained by Central, that live now in Dublin and in other offices, and they host a show that has different details where they talk about the changes. And not only they talk about them, they inform our players, because we want to make sure that this is a constant feedback loop. We invite players from Spain that are normally known because they are local heroes, and that's also a way that where we support content creators, etc. So we create a debate. We talk to them about, hey, this is the change. How do you feel about it? How do you think that's going to change the game? Because players not only want to see what is changing, but they want also advice from the experts, from the pro players, people that they admire and that are local heroes. They want their advice so they can apply that to themselves and be better the next day, the day afterwards, or just the moment after they see the video. So that's our approach to localization. It's trying to find ways to better communicate things to players so they can, in a way that they feel is relevant for the market, the country.
Yeah, for us, we for a long time we were just translating most of our help centers because it was just easier and faster, but that's not what users want. You want to deliver quality help content, and our help center is in like the best way to scale that support, because you can localize that across all the languages. But as Edgar said, like a lot of things you just can't translate, like especially jokes or certain local issues. They don't make sense. They may make sense in English, but not in French or in German. And we really try to localize our content, make it more adapted to the local languages, and also when users are searching for an issue, right? For example, how can I recover my Gmail account, for example? They use like a certain wording, and that is different per language. And we try to adapt that wording into our help content, so it's easier for them to find it, and also in terms of SEO, to be higher up in the search rank. And just use a language that users use as well. If you just translate things, it sounds too dry, and it may not make sense, or you lose certain like context. So it's really, really important to not just translate, but really spend the time and the effort to localize and adapt it to the local market needs, because then you have high quality content, and users are happier to read those support.
So for us, it's I guess we're mostly translating at the moment directly the English content we have on the Help Center onto our languages, and it's not always done in the quality we wish it was. So right now we're obviously constantly working on making our content for users better and to make more sense in the language they prefer to read it in. So we're currently working on some projects to making, so basically our current translation team or localization team is based in US, which is really far away from where the actual language experts sit, which is in Dublin. So so right now we're working on some sort of cohesion between having the translation or localization team based more in EMEA, where they can directly communicate with the people who actually are experts in the language and the lingo that we use. It's not always that translation catches what we're trying to say. So direct translation doesn't, as you already mentioned, doesn't always work in the best way. So that is for the support side of things. And then we have, obviously for the content side of things, we have localized content for the biggest languages for us, which is German and French, among others. So in that sense, we have created videos. We have YouTube videos that are probably about the same topic, but they are more voiced and more posed for the market they're presented in. So it's the difference how, for instance, American audience wants to be presented with something versus how a French market wants to be presented with something. So this is something our content marketing teams works a lot on, to create content that will be relatable for those markets. So, but we have a way to go with our help center, with our communities at the moment. So this is something we're actively working on for this year and going forward.
Super cool. I think there's like so much going international communities. We could be talking here for like another 20 hours, but we have to wrap up because our time is almost over now. But maybe like before we just end, can you guys like for like an hour outro here share either like words of wisdom or a fun fact or one specific thing that someone should keep in mind when thinking about international communities? 30 seconds, something quickly from each of you. Could you share something?
Okay, I'll start. So I think that, so in summary, what I want people, I mean, if I had to, tell everyone like how we normally envision stuff, I'd say like go local. So to me, like going local is literally going where your players are. Just take your boots and go to the ground and talk to your players and make sure that they have a voice that that influences that what you are building for them. Because otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to create stuff based on what you think people want. Why not just going there and asking them? So to me, the key overall is like always thinking about what, in this case, like players or users or however different companies call them, what they want, what do they want, and let's try serve them in the way that they feel is genuine and goes among what they expect from any companies.
I would say go and engage, because engagement is key most of the time. And is very in line with what Edgar said. Be where the users are, engage with them, involve them in your decisions, and make them feel part of your community and the product. because that helps driving decisions and drive your products in the right direction, and helps users adopt the product. So I think engagement is key, and really be with the users, show them that you're not a big company, make it personal, as we discussed earlier. Be there with your own handles, be there as community managers, and engage with the users.
Yeah, I will have to second with that. That's really great advice. Be personal. That's what we're trying to work on our social strategies. Is just be personal, and although you're representing a huge brand, it's just being the people behind the brand and showing that they're not just talking to corporate entity, they're talking to actual people who listen and take the feedback on board. Show them what you're doing with the feedback. That is not just going in. We're actually, here's an action plan what we made based on your feedback, and just engage, as Google said, just engage with the whole community to make them feel heard and seen.
One example for that, if I may, I think 2 weeks ago or so, we had a little outage on Google Plus where it was not working for certain languages, including Russian, which is a fairly big market. And users they couldn't load it. I mean, the page was loading, but they couldn't click on anything because some JavaScripts were not properly loading in the background. And Dutch users were also affected by that. And one of the Dutch users made a post about this, complaining. And it was like the first Monday in the new year. And I escalated that to one of our engineers, and he jumped on it and solved the issue within a couple of hours. And then I got back to the user on the thread, and because the user wrote like some sort of like a compliment, like hey, knights in shiny armor, first day in the new year, engineers fixing a Google Plus issue, and was super happy. And then I jumped in and responded like, hey, like thanks for those nice words. I passed it on to the engineer, and the user was so surprised to hear something from like a Google person. He was like this is incredible that Google comes back here and cares about my thread and my issue and actually responds. And those are the little moments where we can delight users and make them really feel that we listen and are not just a big name in the internet, that we actually people that care about users.
Yeah, that's a super good point. So yeah, like my advice would be the same as all of you guys. I think being one of them, like not only engaging, but being one of them that has similar issues or that came from the same country or speaks the same language, whatever it is, will make it like this connection even stronger than it should be. So with that, I'm wrapping up here. I'll hand it back to Sherry, to Don. You guys take over from there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ed. Thank you so much to all of you guys. It was absolutely fantastic. Really great panel. Make sure you guys connect with this panel online, and we will see you in about 5 minutes for the next panel. All right. See you guys.
See you.
Bye.